A wealthy CEO found that the lady he slept with was a virgin. What he did next shocked her. The billionaire CEO of Manhattan's most powerful company was on his knees in front of her. His hand trembled as he held out a velvet box containing a ring that cost more than most people's houses. And the question he asked would change everything. "Is that my baby?" The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Vivian's hand moved instinctively to the swell of her pregnant belly, and something flickered across his face. Shock, disbelief, and then a raw emotion that looked dangerously like hope. "I don't know what you're talking about." Her voice wavered despite her best efforts to stay composed. "Vivian, I have spent 3 months searching for you. I have hired investigators, called in every favor I have, practically turned this city upside down looking for you. And now you are standing in front of me pregnant, and you are going to pretend there is no connection? What we shared was one night. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything." His voice cracked on the last word, and for a moment, the most powerful man in Manhattan looked completely undone. "You changed something in me that night, made me realize how empty my life had been before you walked into it. And then you left without giving me a chance. A chance to what? Add me to your rotation of beautiful women? Make me your Wednesday girl? To love you. I wanted a chance to love you." And then he did something that made her heart stop beating entirely. Dominic Callahan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He sank to one knee right there in the middle of the conference room, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing all of Manhattan spread out below them like 8 million witnesses. "Vivian Ashford, I'm asking you to marry me." She stared at him in complete shock, her mind racing to catch up with what her eyes were seeing. This wasn't possible. This wasn't how these things worked. Men like Dominic Callahan didn't propose to women like her. They didn't chase women who had made themselves invisible. They didn't look at pregnant bellies with wonder instead of accusation. "You're insane." "Probably. We spent one night together. A night that created a life. Our child, Vivian. Growing inside you right now. A miracle that came from something beautiful we shared. Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people who seemed to know exactly where they belonged? Have you ever made a single decision in one moment that completely rewrote your entire future? What would you do if the most powerful man in the city was on his knees begging for your hand, and you weren't sure if he was playing games or speaking from his heart? This is not just a love story. This is a story about trust, about worthiness, about whether people can truly change when love demands everything from them. It is the story of a woman who learned to survive alone against a man who had never had to fight for anything in his entire life. But to understand why this moment was so earth-shattering, we need to go back to the beginning, to the night when two strangers from completely different worlds collided and created something neither of them expected. If you believe in unexpected love and second chances, hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel. I promise you, this story will take you on an emotional journey you will not forget. Now, let us begin. Vivian Ashford learned very early in life that she could only rely on herself. She was 3 years old when her mother left her at a fire station with nothing but a stuffed rabbit and a note that said, "Please take care of her." She was 4 when she entered the foster care system. She was 7 when she realized that families who said they loved her could send her back just as easily as they had taken her in. 7 homes before she turned 16. 7 different bedrooms where she tried to make herself small enough not to be noticed. 7 times she packed her belongings into a garbage bag because no one had thought to give her a suitcase. 7 times she told herself that this time would be different, and 7 times she learned that hope was a luxury she could not afford. The Hendersons sent her back because their biological daughter didn't like sharing her toys. The Martins returned her when their marriage fell apart, and they couldn't handle an extra child. The Carters kept her for 3 years, long enough for her to start believing she finally belonged. And then Mr. Carter got a job transfer, and they decided taking a foster child across state lines was too complicated. That was the one that broke something inside her. She was 11 years old, standing in the social worker's office with her garbage bag of belongings, and she made a decision that would shape the next 13 years of her life. She would never depend on anyone again. She would never let herself need anyone. She would build a life so solid, so independent, so completely self-sufficient, that no one would ever have the power to throw her away again. She taught herself to code in public libraries because she couldn't afford computer classes. She worked 3 jobs while attending community college because she didn't qualify for enough financial aid. She applied for 73 scholarships and got rejected from 71 of them, but those 2 acceptances were enough to get her into NYU. She graduated with honors. She landed a job at one of the most prestigious firms in Manhattan. She moved into her own apartment, a tiny studio in Brooklyn that she paid for with her own money, and she hung a single photograph on the wall. It was a picture of herself at graduation, alone, holding her diploma with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was 24 years old. She was an executive assistant at Mercer & Associates. She was respected by her colleagues and valued by her boss. And she had never been in a serious relationship because romance required vulnerability, and vulnerability was something Vivian Ashford simply could not afford. That was her life on the night everything changed. It started with a phone call from her boss. "Vivian, I need you to do something for me." Marcus Mercer's voice was casual, the way powerful men sound when they're about to ask you to move mountains but expect you to act like it's nothing. "The Callahan Foundation Gala is tonight. I was supposed to attend, but something came up. I need you to represent the firm. Sir, I don't have anything to wear to something like that. So buy something. Use the company card. Consider it a business expense." She had 4 hours. 4 hours to find a dress suitable for an event where the cheapest gown would cost more than her monthly rent. 4 hours to prepare herself to walk into a room full of people who had never known what it felt like to sleep in a car or wonder where their next meal was coming from. She ended up borrowing an emerald green gown from her colleague Sarah, who was roughly her size and significantly more prepared for impromptu black tie events. The dress hugged her slender frame in a way that made her feel simultaneously powerful and exposed. She pinned her dark hair into an elegant updo and applied makeup with hands that trembled slightly with nerves. "You look amazing," Sarah had said when she saw the finished result. "Like you actually belong at one of those things." Vivian had smiled and said thank you, but inside she was thinking that was exactly the problem. She didn't belong. She had never belonged, and no amount of borrowed silk was going to change that fundamental truth. The venue was a historic mansion in the Upper East Side that had been converted into an event space for occasions exactly like this one. Crystal chandeliers cast 1,000 shattered rainbows across the marble floors. Champagne flowed like water from towers of glasses arranged in perfect pyramids. Women in gowns that cost more than cars mingled with men in tuxedos that cost more than apartments. Vivian stepped through the entrance and immediately felt like an imposter. Everyone here seemed to know exactly who they were and where they belonged. Politicians shook hands with hedge fund managers. Celebrities air-kissed society matrons. Old money aristocrats surveyed new money entrepreneurs with barely concealed disdain. And somewhere in the midst of it all, Vivian Ashford stood frozen near the entrance, clutching a champagne glass she hadn't taken a sip from and counting the minutes until she could reasonably escape. She positioned herself near a wall, half hidden by an enormous floral arrangement, and tried to look like she was supposed to be there. She watched the room with the analytical eye she had developed during years of assessing new foster homes, cataloging the subtle power dynamics at play. Who was courting whom? Who was being deliberately ignored? Who held the real power and who was merely performing it? That was when she first saw him. He stood across the room, surrounded by a cluster of people who hung on his every word. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair that curled slightly at his temples and a jaw that could have been carved from marble. He wore his tuxedo like a second skin, completely at ease in a way that suggested he had been born into rooms like this one. But it was his presence that truly caught her attention. There was something about him that commanded the space around him, that drew every eye in his vicinity without him seeming to try. People orbited around him like planets around a sun, and he accepted their attention with a kind of weary grace that spoke of years of practice. She watched him for several minutes, noting the way his smile never quite reached his eyes, the way he leaned slightly away from the woman who was touching his arm too frequently, the way his gaze occasionally drifted toward the exit with something that looked almost like longing. He's trapped, she thought, just like me, except his cage is made of gold. She didn't expect him to notice her. Men like that didn't notice women like her. She was wallpaper. She was invisible. She was exactly the kind of person who faded into the background at events designed to showcase the extraordinary. So when he appeared beside her 20 minutes later, she nearly dropped her still full champagne glass in shock. "You look like you would rather be anywhere else." His voice was deep, rich, with a hint of amusement that suggested he found her discomfort entertaining rather than off-putting. Vivian turned to face him and felt her breath catch in her throat. Up close, he was even more striking. Steel gray eyes studied her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. A hint of stubble shadowed his jaw, softening features that might otherwise have been too perfect. "I'm not used to events like this," she heard herself say with an honesty that surprised her. "Everyone here seems to know exactly who they are and where they belong. And you don't? I'm still figuring it out." Something shifted in his gaze. A flicker of curiosity replacing the polished indifference he had worn like armor. He tilted his head slightly, studying her as if she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to encounter. Dominic Callahan. He extended his hand, and she took it automatically. His grip was firm, his palm warm against hers. An electric current seemed to pass between them at the contact. "I know who you are, Mr. Callahan. Everyone does. And you are Vivian Ashford. I work for Marcus Mercer. He couldn't attend tonight, so I'm here representing the firm." Mercer sent his assistant instead of coming himself? Dominic's eyebrow arched with what might have been disapproval or might have been amusement. It was difficult to tell. That's either incredibly lazy or incredibly strategic. Why strategic? Because you're far more interesting than he is. Vivian felt heat rise to her cheeks at the unexpected compliment. She was not accustomed to men like Dominic Callahan finding anything about her interesting. She was not accustomed to being noticed at all. "You don't even know me. Not yet. But I would like to." There was something in his voice that made her believe him. Something genuine beneath the polished exterior. Something that whispered maybe, just maybe, this man was not like all the others. The next 3 hours passed like 3 minutes. They moved from the crowded ballroom to a quiet corner, and then from the quiet corner to a private terrace overlooking the glittering Manhattan skyline. Champagne was forgotten. Small talk was abandoned. They spoke with an intimacy that should have been impossible between strangers. He told her things he said he had never told anyone. About inheriting a $4 billion empire at 28 when his father died of a sudden heart attack. About the pressure of being the youngest CEO in his company's history. About the loneliness of being surrounded by people who only saw his bank account, his connections, his usefulness. "I have spent 8 years building an empire, and I have never felt more alone." His voice was quiet, vulnerable in a way that made her heart ache. "Loneliness isn't about being alone," she said softly. "It's about being with people who don't really see you." He turned to look at her, and something in his expression shifted, as if she had said something profound, something that resonated in places he kept carefully hidden. "You understand?" It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "I spent my entire childhood surrounded by people who were supposed to love me and never did. Foster families who treated me like a inconvenience. Social workers who saw me as a case number. I learned early that being in a room full of people doesn't mean you're not alone." She didn't know why she was telling him this. She never talked about her childhood. She had spent years building walls specifically designed to keep these memories locked away. But something about the way he looked at her, the way he listened, without judgment or pity, made the words spill out before she could stop them. She told him about the garbage bags in the car and the Carters who had promised forever and delivered 3 years. She told him about teaching herself to code and working 3 jobs and graduating with honors from a school she had no business attending. She told him about the photograph on her wall and the smile that didn't reach her eyes. And through it all, he listened, really listened, not with the distracted attention of someone waiting for their turn to speak, but with the focused presence of someone who genuinely wanted to understand. "You're remarkable," he said when she finally fell silent. "Do you know that? I'm just surviving." "No." He shook his head slowly, his gray eyes never leaving hers. "You're thriving. There's a difference." His hand found hers in the darkness. His thumb traced circles on her wrist, sending shivers down her spine. And when he leaned in to kiss her, it felt like the world stopped spinning on its axis. She had been kissed before. Awkward pecks from foster brothers who didn't understand boundaries. Experimental embraces from college classmates who lost interest when they learned she wouldn't go further. Nothing that had ever made her feel like this. Like her entire body was waking up from a sleep she hadn't known she was in. When he pulled back, his forehead resting against hers, she could hear his breathing was as unsteady as her own. "Come home with me." It wasn't a demand. It was a question, an invitation she could accept or decline without consequence. She could see in his eyes that he would respect whatever answer she gave. Every logical thought in her brain screamed warnings. She didn't know this man. He was a billionaire and she was a nobody. Tomorrow he would forget her name and she would be left with nothing but memories and regrets. But logic had never made her feel this alive. Yes, His penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building in Tribeca. The elevator opened directly into a living room with floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the entire city, twinkling like a blanket of fallen stars. Modern art adorned the walls. Furniture that probably cost more than her yearly salary was arranged with careless elegance. Vivian should have felt intimidated. Instead, with his hand still holding hers, she felt strangely at peace. "Can I get you something to drink?" "No." "Are you nervous?" She considered the question honestly, terrified. "We don't have to do anything you don't want to do. We can just talk. Or I can call you a car. Or..." She kissed him before he could finish the sentence. Because she was tired of being afraid. Because she was tired of protecting herself from things that might hurt her instead of reaching for things that might heal her. Because for the first time in her life, she wanted something more than she feared losing it. They moved from the living room to the bedroom in a blur of touches and whispers. His hands were gentle, careful, always asking permission before taking. Her body responded to him in ways she had never experienced, had never even imagined. There was something she hadn't told him, something she should have said before they went this far. But she didn't want him to treat her differently, didn't want to be handled like something fragile. For one night, she wanted to be a woman who belonged in a place like this, a woman who knew what she was doing. It didn't matter anyway. Bodies don't lie. The moment came when pretending was no longer possible. She saw the realization dawn in his eyes, felt him freeze mid-motion, watched confusion and shock and something else she couldn't name flicker across his features in rapid succession. "Vivienne." His voice was rough, uncertain. Was this your first time?" The shame hit her like a wave. All the vulnerability she had tried to hide came crashing down around her, leaving her exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the absence of clothing. "I should go." She tried to pull away, but his hand caught her wrists gently, not restraining, requesting. "Wait, please, don't run. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to treat me differently. How could I not treat you differently?" His voice cracked on the words. "You gave me something precious, something you can never give anyone else. And I took it without even knowing, I chose to be here." Her voice came out fiercer than she intended. "I chose you. Don't you dare turn this into something I need to be rescued from." They stared at each other in the moonlit bedroom, both breathing hard, both grappling with the weight of what had just occurred. The Manhattan skyline glittered beyond the windows, indifferent to the seismic shift happening between these two people. "Stay," he said finally. "Please, stay tonight. Let me hold you. Let me..." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, looking more uncertain than a man of his power and position had any right to look. "I don't know what this is between us, but I know I don't want it to end with you walking out that door feeling ashamed." She stayed. They fell asleep tangled together, his arm wrapped protectively around her, her head resting on his chest, where she could hear the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. For the first time in her life, Vivian felt safe in someone else's arms. For the first time, she understood why people risked heartbreak for the chance at connection. But even as she drifted into sleep, some part of her knew this couldn't last. Men like Dominic Callahan didn't keep women like her. They collected them briefly, enjoyed them temporarily, and discarded them when the novelty wore off. She had been abandoned too many times to believe anything different. Morning would come, reality would return, and she would do what she had always done. She would protect herself. She would survive. Dawn crept through the floor-to-ceiling windows in shades of pink and gold. Vivian woke slowly, disoriented for a moment by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then memory came flooding back, and she turned to look at the man sleeping beside her. Dominic's face was relaxed in sleep, the sharp edges of his features softened into something almost boyish. A lock of dark hair fell across his forehead. His breathing was deep and even. He looked peaceful, vulnerable, human. She could stay. She could wait for him to wake up and see what happened next. She could take a chance on something that felt more real than anything she had ever experienced. But what if she stayed and he asked her to leave? What if she let herself hope and he proved to be just like everyone else who had ever promised her something and failed to deliver? The Carters had promised forever. They had given her 3 years in a garbage bag. She couldn't survive that again. Not from him. Because somehow, in the space of a single night, this man had slipped past every wall she had ever built. And if she gave him the power to hurt her, she knew he would destroy her completely. Better to leave now. Better to preserve the memory as something beautiful rather than watch it curdle into rejection. She slipped out of bed silently, gathering her clothes from where they had been scattered across the bedroom floor. She dressed in the bathroom, avoiding her reflection in the mirror because she knew what she would see. A woman who was running. A woman who was afraid. A woman who would rather choose loneliness than risk disappointment. On his pillow, she left a note written on a piece of paper she found on his nightstand. "Thank you for seeing me last night. For a few hours you made me feel extraordinary. Please don't look for me. Some things are better left as beautiful memories." She didn't sign it. He would know who it was from. The elevator ride down felt like an escape pod launching from a doomed spacecraft. The doorman didn't look twice at her as she walked through the lobby in last night's gown. The morning sunlight hit her face as she stepped onto the sidewalk, and she squinted against its brightness. She had done the right thing. She had protected herself. She had survived. So why did it feel like she had just left the best thing that had ever happened to her behind? The first week without her was a blur of confusion and frustration. Dominic Callahan had woken to an empty bed and a note that told him nothing useful. She had asked him not to look for her, but that was precisely what he intended to do. Women didn't just disappear after nights like the one they had shared. There had been something real between them. He had felt it. He knew she had felt it too. He called her workplace first. Mercer and Associates confirmed that Vivian Ashford was an employee, but they would not provide her personal contact information. He understood. It would have been inappropriate. But understanding didn't make the rejection any less frustrating. He tried sending flowers. They were returned unopened. He attempted to schedule meetings with Marcus Mercer himself, hoping to somehow create an opportunity to see her again. Every request was politely declined. On the third day, he discovered that she had changed her phone number. The old one simply rang and rang, never connecting. On the seventh day, he learned that she had quit her job at Mercer and Associates without notice. The HR department would not tell him anything else. By the second week, his private investigator delivered the news that made Dominic's blood run cold. Vivian Ashford had vacated her apartment, left no forwarding address, and essentially vanished from New York City. "She doesn't want to be found, sir," the investigator said apologetically. "Some people know how to disappear. Then we look harder." Dominic's voice was steel, but his heart was ice. She was out there somewhere, the woman who had changed everything in a single night, and she was hiding from him as if he were something to be feared rather than someone who simply wanted to know her. He didn't understand. They had connected. They had shared things neither of them shared with anyone else. She had trusted him with her body, her story, her vulnerability, and then she had run as if all of that meant nothing. Or maybe, he thought during the dark hours of night, she had run because it meant too much. Because she was as terrified of what they had found as he was exhilarated by it. Whatever the reason, he couldn't let her go. Not like this. Not without understanding why. Vivian, meanwhile, was building a new life in Boston. She had chosen the city because it was far enough from New York to feel safe, but close enough to start over, without completely abandoning the career she had worked so hard to build. A contact from her NYU days had connected her with a nonprofit organization that ran shelters for women escaping domestic violence. They needed someone with her organizational skills and her understanding of systems. It wasn't the corporate ladder she had been climbing, but somehow it felt more real, more meaningful. Every woman who walked through those shelter doors carried a story of survival that resonated with something deep in Vivian's own experience. She understood what it meant to start over with nothing. She understood what it meant to rebuild. She threw herself into the work with the same determination she had brought to every challenge in her life. She arrived early and stayed late. She learned the names of every woman and child who came through their doors. She advocated fiercely for funding and resources and policy changes that would make their services more accessible. She tried very hard not to think about Dominic Callahan. She failed miserably. Every dark-haired man in a well-tailored suit made her heart skip. Every charity gala announcement in the news made her remember champagne and chandeliers and gray eyes that had seen straight through her defenses. Every time she lay alone in her new bed in her new apartment, she thought about what it had felt like to fall asleep in his arms. But she had made the right choice. She was certain of it. Men like him didn't keep women like her. If she had stayed, he would have grown bored. He would have found someone more sophisticated, more connected, more suitable, and she would have been destroyed by the loss of something she had allowed herself to believe was real. This was better, cleaner. She would remember their night as something beautiful, and she would move forward with her life. And then, 6 weeks after she had walked away from his penthouse, everything changed. The nausea started subtly. She blamed it on the cafeteria food at work, which was admittedly terrible, then on stress from the new job, then on a possible stomach bug that seemed to linger far longer than any stomach bug should. But when her period didn't come, she couldn't ignore the truth any longer. She bought the pregnancy test on her lunch break, hiding it at the bottom of her bag like a shameful secret. She took it in the bathroom of her tiny Boston apartment, with hands that shook so badly she could barely follow the instructions. 3 minutes. The box said to wait 3 minutes. Those 3 minutes lasted approximately 7 lifetimes. When the time was up, she looked at the stick in her trembling hand. 2 pink lines stared back at her, clear and undeniable. Pregnant. She was pregnant with Dominic Callahan's child. The bathroom floor was cold against her back as she slid down the wall, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her mind raced through 1,000 thoughts at once, none of them coherent. She was pregnant. After one night with a man she barely knew, a man she had run away from, a man who was probably already forgetting her name, she was pregnant. What was she supposed to do? She could tell him. She could find a way to contact him, explain the situation, give him the chance to be involved. He had resources she couldn't imagine. He could provide for this child in ways she never could. But the thought of approaching Dominic Callahan with this news made her stomach turn in ways that had nothing to do with morning sickness. She could already imagine how that conversation would go. He would think she had done this on purpose, that she was after his money, that she had trapped him with the oldest trick in the book. Or worse, he would do the right thing. He would offer to take care of her, not out of love, but out of obligation. He would set her up in some apartment and visit occasionally and eventually marry someone more suitable while she raised his child on the margins of his real life. She couldn't bear that. Any of it. She placed her hand on her still flat stomach, feeling nothing but knowing that something was there. Something was growing. Something that was half her and half him. "What are we going to do?" she whispered to the life inside her. "How am I supposed to raise you alone?" The answer came with a clarity that surprised her. The same way she had done everything else in her life. Alone, determined, and refusing to be defeated. She would not tell Dominic Callahan about this baby. She would not become another name on his list of obligations. She would raise this child with love, give them everything she had never had, and prove that family wasn't about biology or money or last names. Family was about showing up every single day, no matter how hard. Her child would never know what it felt like to be unwanted. Her child would never wonder if they were loved. Her child would never be packed into a garbage bag and sent away to somewhere new. She wiped her tears, pushed herself up from the bathroom floor, and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was terrified, but she was also strong, stronger than she had ever been. She could do this. She had to do this, and she would. What would you have done in Vivian's situation? Would you have told Dominic about the baby, or would you have protected yourself the way she did? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you're wondering whether Dominic will let her disappear so easily, stay with me. The chase is about to begin. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because what happens next will absolutely shock you. 3 months passed like 3 years. Dominic sat in his corner office on the 53rd floor, staring at the same private investigator's report he had read 17 times. The words hadn't changed. Vivian Ashford remained vanished. No credit card activity in New York. No social media presence. No forwarding address. No digital footprint of any kind. She had erased herself from his world as completely as if she had never existed. But she had existed. She still existed somewhere, and the memory of her haunted him in ways he couldn't explain and couldn't escape. He had dated countless women over the years. Socialites who knew which fork to use at formal dinners. Models whose beauty was professionally maintained. Executives who understood the demands of his schedule. None of them had ever made him feel the way Vivian had in those few stolen hours. She had seen him. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, not the tabloid headline. Just him, just Dominic, the lonely man behind the empire. And now she was gone. "Mr. Callahan," his assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your mother is here to see you. Send her in." Eleanor Callahan swept into his office with the regal bearing of a woman who had spent her entire life surrounded by wealth and power. At 62, she remained beautiful, impeccably styled, and completely convinced that she knew what was best for everyone around her. "Dominic, darling, we need to talk about the Hartford situation," The Hartford situation was Eleanor's code for the daughter of one of the oldest families on the East Coast who she had been trying to set Dominic up with for the past 6 months. "There's nothing to discuss, Mother. She's perfect for you. Beautiful, well-bred, comes from an excellent family. I'm not interested. You're not interested in anyone." Eleanor's voice sharpened with frustration. "It's been 3 months since you've been seen with any woman at all. People are starting to talk. Let them talk. Dominic, you have responsibilities. To the company, to the family name, to the legacy your father built. You need to settle down, produce heirs, ensure the continuation of everything we've worked for. Heirs." The word hit Dominic like a physical blow. He thought of Vivian, wherever she was, completely unaware that she was carrying his legacy inside her body. Not that he knew, not that anyone knew. Not yet. "I'll find someone when I'm ready, Mother. Not before." Eleanor studied her son with eyes that were too perceptive for comfort. Something changed. "At the gala 3 months ago, you came home different, distant. You've been distracted ever since. What happened?" "Nothing happened." "Don't lie to me, Dominic. I've known you your entire life. Something happened at that gala, and whatever it was, you haven't been the same since." He considered telling her the truth. About Vivian, about the connection he had felt, about the way she had vanished and the way he couldn't stop looking for her. But his mother would never understand. Eleanor Callahan believed love was a luxury for people who didn't have empires to protect. She had married his father for strategic reasons and learned to care for him over time. The idea of a woman who made you feel alive, who saw through all your defenses, who made you question everything you thought you wanted, that was not part of Eleanor's worldview. "I'm fine, Mother. Just tired." Eleanor left eventually, unconvinced but unwilling to press the issue further. Dominic turned back to the investigator's report, staring at the words that told him nothing useful. Somewhere out there, Vivian was living her life, moving forward, probably forgetting about him entirely. And here he sat, frozen in the moment she had left him, unable to let go of something he had only held for a single night. Across the country, Vivian was not forgetting about Dominic. She was thinking about him every single day, often while throwing up in her bathroom at 5 in the morning. The first trimester was brutal. Morning sickness that lasted all day. Exhaustion that made even simple tasks feel impossible. Emotional swings that had her crying at commercials for paper towels. She went to work, did her job, came home, and collapsed into bed, wondering how she was going to survive 6 more months of this. But she survived, the way she always survived, one day at a time. By the end of the first trimester, the nausea began to fade. Her energy returned, and something else emerged, something she hadn't expected. Joy. She started talking to the baby during her commute to work. Just small things at first. Observations about the weather, complaints about other drivers. Gradually, the conversations became more substantial. She told the baby about her childhood, about the foster homes, about the Carters who had almost been enough. She told the baby about Dominic, about the night they had shared, about why she had made the choice she had made. "Your father is a powerful man," she said one morning, her hand resting on the small curve of her stomach. "He runs an empire and everyone wants something from him. But that night, for a few hours, he was just a person, a lonely person who needed to be seen. And I think I was the first one to really see him." She paused, watching the Boston traffic crawl past her window. Maybe that's why he mattered so much. Because we recognized something in each other. Two people who had learned to be alone, finding each other in a room full of strangers. The baby, of course, said nothing. But somehow Vivian felt heard anyway. At 16 weeks, she had her first ultrasound. She went alone, the same way she did everything else, and lay on the examination table with her heart pounding while the technician spread cold gel on her growing belly. "Let's see what we've got here," the technician said cheerfully. The wand pressed against Vivian's skin, and suddenly there it was, a heartbeat. Fast and strong, and undeniably real. "There's your baby," the technician said, pointing to the small form on the screen. "Everything looks perfect. Would you like to know the sex?" Vivian stared at the image, tears streaming down her cheeks. That was her baby. That was Dominic's baby. A tiny human being they had created together without meaning to, without planning, without any idea what they were starting. "Yes, yes, I want to know." The technician moved the wand, studying the screen with practiced expertise. "Congratulations," she said. "You're having a girl. A girl. Vivian left the clinic with a printout of the ultrasound image clutched in her hand. She stood on the sidewalk outside, surrounded by people rushing to their various destinations, and she looked at the tiny form captured in black and white. A daughter. She was having a daughter. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I'm your mama, and I'm going to give you everything I never had. I'm going to love you so much you'll never doubt it for a single second. I promise." The months continued to pass. Vivian's belly grew. Her role at the nonprofit expanded as she proved herself invaluable. She made friends among the staff and the women they served, building a community she had never known she needed. And somewhere in Manhattan, Dominic Callahan continued to search for a woman he couldn't forget, completely unaware that his daughter was growing stronger every day in a city just a few hundred miles away. Fate, it seemed, was preparing for a collision. The collision came on an ordinary Tuesday morning in late spring. Vivian was 7 months pregnant now, her belly a prominent curve beneath the professional maternity dress she had purchased specifically for today's meeting. Her nonprofit had been growing steadily, and they had identified an opportunity that could transform their reach entirely. The Callahan Foundation, one of the largest philanthropic organizations on the East Coast, was accepting proposals for their Women's Initiative grant program. The grant would fund 3 new shelters in underserved communities. It would provide job training programs, childcare support, legal aid. It would help hundreds of women rebuild their lives. It was exactly the kind of project Vivian had dedicated herself to. She had hesitated when her director asked her to present the proposal. The Callahan Foundation. The name alone made her heart race. But she had done her research. The foundation employed dozens of program directors who handled grant applications. The CEO, the famous Dominic Callahan, wouldn't be personally involved in a meeting like this. He had an empire to run. He wouldn't waste his time on a nonprofit from Boston. She was safe. She was certain of it. The flight from Boston to New York was smooth. The taxi ride to the foundation's headquarters was uneventful. Vivian checked her reflection in the lobby bathroom, adjusting her hair, smoothing her dress over her pregnant belly, practicing her calm, confident smile. "You've got this," she told her reflection. "It's just a presentation. You've done hundreds of presentations. This is no different." But her hands were trembling as she gathered her materials and approached the reception desk. "Vivian Ashford," she said. "I have a 10 o'clock meeting regarding the Women's Initiative grant proposal." The receptionist typed something into her computer and smiled. "Of course, Miss Ashford. They're ready for you in conference room A. Take the elevator to the 40th floor, and someone will meet you there." The elevator ride felt endless. Vivian clutched her folder of materials and focused on her breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Calm, professional, prepared. The doors opened onto a sleek, modern floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. A young man in an expensive suit was waiting for her. "Miss Ashford, right this way, please." She followed him down a corridor lined with contemporary art, past offices where people in business attire worked at gleaming desks, through a set of double doors into a conference room that was larger than her entire apartment. There were 6 people already seated around the massive table. Foundation staff, she assumed, program directors, grant coordinators, the people who would actually be evaluating her proposal. And then she saw him. Dominic Callahan sat at the head of the table, his gray eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that made her blood turn to ice. He looked older than she remembered, lines of stress visible around his eyes. But he was still devastatingly handsome, still radiating that quiet power that had drawn her to him across a crowded ballroom 8 months ago. Their eyes met. Time stopped. She watched his gaze drop to her pregnant belly, watched the calculations happening behind his eyes, watched shock and disbelief and something that looked dangerously like hope flicker across his features in rapid succession. "Everyone out?" His voice was quiet but carried an authority that sent the other foundation staff scrambling for the door. They didn't question. They didn't hesitate. They simply gathered their things and fled. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot. Vivian stood frozen near the entrance, her folder clutched to her chest like a shield, her heart pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it from across the room. Dominic rose from his chair slowly. He moved around the table toward her, his steps measured, his eyes never leaving her face. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, could see the slight tremor in his hands. "Is that my baby?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Vivian's hand moved instinctively to her belly, protective, revealing. I don't know what you're talking about. Her voice wavered despite her best efforts to stay composed. Vivian. He said her name like a prayer, like a curse, like the answer to a question he had been asking for months. I have spent 3 months searching for you. I have hired investigators, called in every favor I have, practically turned this city upside down looking for you. And now you are standing in front of me, pregnant, and you are going to pretend there is no connection? What we shared was one night. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything. His voice cracked on the last word, and for a moment, the most powerful man in Manhattan looked completely undone. You changed something in me that night, made me realize how empty my life had been before you walked into it. And then you left without giving me a chance to what? Vivian felt her defenses rising, all the fears she had carried for months spilling out before she could stop them. Add me to your rotation of beautiful women? Make me your obligation? Set me up in some apartment and visit occasionally while you marry someone more suitable? Is that what you think of me? I don't know what to think of you. I knew you for one night. Then let me tell you what I think. Dominic took another step closer, and Vivian forced herself not to retreat. I think about you every single day. I think about the way you laughed at my jokes that weren't funny. I think about the way you trusted me with stories you don't tell anyone. I think about the way you felt in my arms, and the way you looked at me like I was just a person instead of a bank account. Dominic, I have dated women my entire adult life, and not one of them has ever made me feel what I felt with you. Not one of them has ever seen past the money and the name and the expectations. But you did. You saw me. And I have been looking for you ever since you walked out of my life. You don't know me. I know you grew up in foster care and never let it break you. I know you taught yourself skills that most people need years of formal education to acquire. I know you see beauty in unexpected places and aren't impressed by wealth or status. I know you gave me something precious that night, not just your innocence, but your trust. And I have spent 3 months trying to understand why you thought I would squander it. Vivian felt tears threatening behind her eyes. She blinked them back furiously, refusing to show weakness. Because that's what men like you do. Men like me. Pain flashed across his features. You mean wealthy men? Powerful men? You think I'm incapable of real emotion because of my bank account? I think you've never had to fight for anything in your life. I think you're interested in me because I'm a challenge, and the moment you actually have me, you'll get bored. Then let me prove you wrong. And then he did something that stopped her heart entirely. Dominic Callahan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He sank to one knee right there in the middle of the conference room, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing all of Manhattan spread out below them like 8 million witnesses. Vivian Ashford, I am asking you to marry me. She stared at him in complete shock, her mind racing to catch up with what her eyes were seeing. This wasn't possible. This wasn't how things worked. They had spent one night together. One night. And now he was on his knees with a ring, proposing marriage to a woman he barely knew. You're insane. Probably. His voice was steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. We spent one night together. A night that created a life. His gaze dropped to her belly, then returned to her face. Our child, Vivian. Growing inside you right now, a miracle that came from something beautiful we shared. This isn't how proposals are supposed to work. We're supposed to date first, meet each other's families, argue about whose turn it is to do the dishes, build a foundation before we build a life. We can do all of that, but I need you to know from this moment forward that my intentions are permanent. He opened the velvet box to reveal a stunning but understated diamond ring. Not the ostentatious rock she would have expected from a billionaire. Something elegant and timeless, something that whispered rather than shouted. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly, he continued. I'm asking you to give me the chance to earn it. Let me court you properly. Let me prove that I can be the kind of partner you deserve, the kind of father our child needs. And if I say no, then I'll keep asking. Every day. For as long as it takes. I'll fund your nonprofit, support your causes, show up at every event until you're sick of seeing my face. Despite everything, despite the fear and the shock and the overwhelming impossibility of this moment, Vivian felt her lips twitch. That sounds dangerously close to stalking. I prefer to call it dedicated persistence. She looked at him, really looked at him, kneeling on the floor of his own conference room, with a ring in his hand and hope in his eyes. This wasn't the polished CEO she had met at the gala. This wasn't the billionaire who commanded empires and intimidated competitors. This was just a man, vulnerable and uncertain, asking for a chance he wasn't sure he deserved. And something inside her, something that had been frozen since the morning she walked out of his penthouse, began to thaw. "I can't say yes." His face fell, but he didn't move from his position. "Not yet," she continued. "I don't know you, Dominic. Not really. And I won't marry someone just because I'm pregnant with his child. I won't build my life on obligation and desperation. What will you build it on? Proof. Show me you can be trusted. Show me you're not going to get bored and move on. Show me that this isn't just guilt or duty or some billionaire fantasy about saving the poor girl from the foster system." She took a breath, feeling the weight of what she was about to say. "Earn me." Dominic rose from his knee slowly, the ring still in his hand. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Tell me your conditions. Respect my boundaries. Don't overwhelm me with grand gestures that make me feel like a charity case. Be consistent. Show up when you say you will. Prove that you can be patient. Done. What else? Don't try to take over my life. I've built something real in Boston. I have a job I love, friends who matter to me, a community that needs me. I'm not going to abandon all of that because you wave a ring in my face. I would never ask you to. And the baby is mine. This is not a custody negotiation. If you want to be part of her life, you earn that too. Through actions, not lawyers." "Her." Dominic's voice caught on the word. "We're having a girl?" Vivian nodded slowly, watching emotions cascade across his face. Wonder, joy, fear, hope. "A daughter," he whispered. "We're having a daughter." He looked at her belly with an expression that made something shift in her chest. This wasn't the calculating gaze of a businessman evaluating an asset. This was the awed wonder of a man seeing his future for the first time. "I'll earn it," he said softly. "All of it. Whatever it takes." The ring went back into his pocket. He didn't try to kiss her, didn't push for more than she had offered. He simply looked at her with those gray eyes and made a promise she desperately wanted to believe. "I'll see you soon, Vivian. Don't make promises you can't keep." "I never do. Not anymore. This is the moment everything changes." Would you give him a second chance? Or would his past, his privilege, his assumptions be too much to overcome? Let me know in the comments what you think Vivian should do. And make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because what Dominic does next will absolutely shock you. What happened over the following weeks defied everything Vivian had ever believed about men like Dominic Callahan. He didn't call immediately. She had expected a barrage of communication, an overwhelming assault of attention. Instead, he gave her 3 days of silence. Time to process, time to breathe, time to decide whether she was ready to let him into her world. When he did reach out, it was a single text message. "How are you feeling today?" Not "how is our baby?" Not "when can I see you?" Just a simple question about her well-being. "Tired," she replied. "The baby kept me up kicking all night." She likes to practice her soccer skills at 2 in the morning. Apparently, she must get that from you. "I was told I slept through the night from week 1. Vivian found herself smiling at her phone, a reaction that surprised her. She wasn't supposed to be charmed by him. She was supposed to be guarded, suspicious, protected. But it was hard to stay guarded when he kept doing things that chipped away at her defenses. He asked about her work, not just polite inquiries, but detailed questions about the shelter program, the women they served, the challenges they faced. He remembered names she mentioned in passing, following up later to ask how specific situations had resolved. He sent her a first edition of a book she had mentioned loving in college, accompanied by a note that said simply, "I remember you saying you could never afford to buy the books you wanted to read. Now you can." He showed up in Boston unannounced one Saturday morning, not at her apartment but at the shelter where she worked. He wasn't dressed in a $1,000 suit. He wore jeans and a casual shirt and an expression of genuine curiosity. "I wanted to see what you've built," he said. "Can you show me around?" Vivian's colleagues watched with barely concealed fascination as the famous Dominic Callahan spent 5 hours at their facility. He didn't act like a wealthy donor surveying potential tax write-offs. He sat on the floor with children and built Lego towers for hours. He listened to mothers share their stories of escape and survival. He asked thoughtful questions about their programs and needs. "He's not what I expected," her friend Marina admitted later that day. "I thought billionaires were all cold and entitled." "He can be cold," Vivian said. I've read about him in board meetings, cutting through incompetence with a single look. But that's not all he is. Are you falling for him?" Vivian placed a hand on her growing belly, feeling her daughter's now familiar movements. "I think I already fell. I'm just too scared to admit it." The weeks became a month. The month became 2. Vivian's due date approached, and somehow, without her quite realizing when it happened, Dominic became a fixture in her life. He attended her doctor's appointments when she allowed it, sitting in the corner of the examination room with an expression of wonder on his face. He learned the rhythms of her schedule and showed up with food when he knew she would forget to eat. He read books about pregnancy and childbirth, surprising her with knowledge about fetal development and labor stages. "Did you know," he said one evening while they walked along the Boston waterfront, "that at this stage, the baby can hear our voices? She's learning to recognize us. You've been reading. I want to understand. I want to be prepared." No one had ever prepared for her before. No foster family had ever read books about how to make her feel welcome. No one had ever studied for the role of loving her. "Dominic," she said softly, "why are you doing all this?" "Because I should have done it from the beginning. Because you deserve someone who shows up. Because I spent 3 months looking for you, and now that I've found you, I'm not going to waste a single opportunity to prove that I can be trusted." They stopped walking. The sun was setting over the harbor, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Vivian turned to face him, this man who had somehow become the center of her world without her permission. "I'm scared." The words came out before she could stop them. "Scared of what?" "Of believing this is real. Of letting myself depend on you. Of giving you the power to hurt me." He took her hands in his grip warm and steady. "I understand. I know why trust is hard for you. I know what you've been through. And I'm not asking you to forget all of that. I'm just asking you to give me a chance to write a different story. What if you get bored? What if you realize I'm not worth the effort? What if you leave? Then I would be the biggest fool in the history of fools. But Vivian, I'm not going to leave. I've had everything money can buy my entire life, and none of it has ever made me feel the way you do. You're not an obligation. You're not a conquest. You're the first real thing I've ever found." They stood there as the sun sank below the horizon, 2 people on the edge of something neither of them fully understood. The baby kicked between them, a reminder of the life they had created, the future they might build together. "Ask me again," Vivian whispered. "Ask you what?" "You know what?" Dominic's breath caught. He reached into his pocket, the same pocket where he had carried the ring every single day since that first proposal. He sank to one knee on the waterfront walkway, and this time, there were no conference rooms, no floor-to-ceiling windows, no witnesses except the seagulls and the fading light. Just 2 people who had found each other against all odds. "Vivian Ashford, will you marry me?" "Yes." The word came out steady and sure, surprising her with its certainty. But there was no doubt in her heart. She had spent months watching this man prove himself. She had seen him with the women at the shelter, with the children who needed attention, with her colleagues who expected arrogance and received humility. She had watched him learn and grow and change. He wasn't the same man who had attended that gala 8 months ago. And maybe she wasn't the same woman either. Maybe they had both been remade by the choices they had made and the chances they had taken. Dominic slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. He rose and pulled her into his arms, and when he kissed her, it felt like coming home. Their wedding was small by Callahan standards. Dominic's mother had suggested 1,000 guests, a cathedral venue, coverage in all the major publications. Vivian had looked at her calmly and said, 200 people maximum, and I'm inviting the women from my shelter, and if that's a problem, we can elope. Eleanor Callahan had learned over the past several months that her future daughter-in-law was not someone who could be pushed around. She had also learned, somewhat to her surprise, that Vivian's strength was exactly what her son needed. "She's good for him," Eleanor admitted to her friend at the pre-wedding dinner. "She challenges him, keeps him honest, and the way he looks at her, I've never seen him look at anyone that way." Vivian chose a simple ivory gown that accommodated her 8-month belly. The ceremony was held in the garden of a small estate outside Boston, under an arch of white roses and trailing greenery. The director of her shelter walked her down the aisle, filling the role she had never expected anyone to fill. Dominic cried when he saw her coming toward him. The powerful CEO of Callahan Industries, who had faced hostile takeovers and market crashes without flinching, completely undone by the sight of the woman he loved walking toward him in a white dress. "I love you," he whispered as she reached him. "I love you too," she replied. Even though you snore, I do not snore. You absolutely do. The officiant cleared his throat with a smile. Shall we begin? The vows were simple and personal. Dominic promised to never make her feel invisible again, to be present for every moment that mattered, to choose their family over his company every single day. Vivian promised to let herself be loved, to trust even when it terrified her, to build a life with him rather than running from it. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The kiss they shared was soft and sweet, a promise of the life they were beginning together. Their guests cheered, a mix of Dominic's society friends and Vivian's nonprofit colleagues, a combination that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. At the reception, the director of Vivian's shelter gave a toast that brought tears to everyone's eyes. I have known Vivian for less than a year, she said, but in that time, I have watched her pour herself into helping women rebuild their lives. She understands their pain because she has lived it. She offers them hope because she has found it. And today, I get to watch her step into the happily ever after that she has spent her whole life earning. Later, as they danced under string lights in the garden, Dominic's hand resting gently on Vivian's belly where their daughter was doing her now familiar acrobatics. He marveled at how different this felt from anything he had imagined for his life. Any regrets? Vivian asked. Only one. What's that? That it took me so long to find you. That I spent years chasing success and status when this was what I should have been looking for all along. We both needed time to become the people we are now. Maybe we had to be alone first before we could be together. Maybe. But I'm grateful for every day from now on, even when I'm grumpy from being up all night with the baby. Especially then. I'll love watching you handle the sleepless nights with the same determination you handle everything else. And when you have to travel for business and miss important moments, then business travel gets canceled. Family comes first now. Vivian smiled, seeing the truth of that commitment in his eyes. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For becoming someone who deserved a chance. For proving that people can change. For not giving up on me when I was too scared to give you a chance. Thank you for being brave enough to let me try. Their daughter arrived 3 weeks later. The labor was long and difficult, 22 hours of pain and fear and exhaustion. But Dominic never left her side, not for a single moment. He held her hand through the worst of the contractions. He advocated for her when she was too tired to speak for herself. He whispered encouragement and love, and I'm right here, I'm not going anywhere. And when Aurora finally made her entrance into the world, screaming her displeasure at being evicted from her comfortable home, Dominic was the first to cry. She's perfect, he whispered, holding his daughter for the first time with trembling hands. She has your nose. And your stubbornness, if those lungs are any indication. They named her Aurora because she represented the dawn of everything new in their lives. A new family, a new beginning, a new chapter they would write together. Dominic held his daughter like she was made of glass, his face wet with tears, his voice barely above a whisper. I will never let you feel unwanted, he promised her. Not for a single day. You are loved. You are wanted. You are everything. Vivian watched her husband with their newborn daughter, and for the first time in her life, she understood what family was supposed to feel like. Not obligation or duty or social arrangement, just love. Pure and simple and overwhelming. She reached out and took Dominic's hand. The three of them connected in the hospital bed, and she knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. 5 years later, Aurora Callahan was explaining to her preschool class exactly how babies were made. She had researched the topic thoroughly after her mother announced that a new sibling was on the way, and she felt it was her duty to share this important information with her less informed classmates. And then they get born at the hospital, she concluded with the confidence of someone who had never been wrong about anything in her entire life. And sometimes they're girls, and sometimes they're boys, and sometimes they're surprises. Aurora, her teacher interrupted gently. Perhaps we should let the other children share now? But I wasn't finished explaining about the nutrients. Vivian, watching from the doorway where she had arrived for pickup, bit her lip to keep from laughing. Her daughter was absolutely her father's child. Brilliant, confident, and utterly convinced that every room she entered needed the benefit of her wisdom. How was your day, sweetheart? Educational. I taught everyone about babies. You're welcome. I'm sure their parents will be thrilled. At home, they found Dominic already there, having left work early, as he did most days now. True to his wedding vows, he had restructured his company to prioritize family. He had promoted capable people, delegated with intention, and structured his life around being present for the moments that mattered. His board had been skeptical at first. A CEO who left meetings for soccer games? Who missed product launches for piano recitals? It was unconventional, to say the least, but Callahan Industries was more profitable than ever under his leadership, and the other executives had learned that their CEO was simply a man who understood what actually mattered in life. "Daddy," Aurora launched herself at him with characteristic enthusiasm. "I explained nutrients today." "Nutrients?" He looked at Vivian with barely concealed amusement. "What kind of nutrients?" "Baby growing nutrients. The ones mommy is giving the new baby through her belly button." "Ah, those nutrients." Later that evening, after Aurora was asleep in her room surrounded by the books and art supplies that filled every corner, Dominic found Vivian on the terrace of their Boston home. They had kept the house rather than moving to Manhattan because this was where her work was, where her community was, where she had built something real. The Manhattan skyline was hours away, but the Boston harbor stretched before them, glittering with reflected city lights. Dominic wrapped his arms around his wife from behind, his hands resting on the swell of her pregnant belly. "I almost missed all of this," he murmured into her hair. "But you didn't. Because you gave me a chance I didn't deserve." Vivian turned in his arms to face him, this man who had transformed himself for her, for their daughter, for the family they were still building. "You earned it," she said softly. "Every day, for 5 years, you've earned it, and I'll keep earning it, for the rest of our lives." Do you ever think about that night? The gala? Every day. It's where my life really began. You were so scared. I could see it in your eyes. I was terrified, but something about you made me braver than I'd ever been. She reached up to touch his face, tracing the familiar lines that had become so dear to her. "I almost didn't go, to the gala. I almost called in sick. I almost let fear win. I'm glad you didn't." "Me too." They stood together as the moon rose over the harbor, two people who had found each other against impossible odds. Behind them, in her pink bedroom, their daughter dreamed the dreams of a child who had never known a moment of doubt about being loved. Inside Vivian's belly, their son was practicing his own acrobatic routine, preparing to join a family that would welcome him with open arms. "Thank you," Dominic whispered, "for being brave, for us, for our family, for giving me everything I didn't know I needed. Thank you for becoming someone worth being brave for." He kissed her then, slow and deep, with all the love they had built over 5 years of choosing each other every single day. This is not the ending of their story. There is no ending. There are only new chapters, new challenges, new opportunities to prove that love is a choice you make every morning when you wake up next to the person who matters most. Vivian had spent her entire childhood believing she was unwanted, believing that love was conditional, believing that the only person she could depend on was herself. She had been wrong. Dominic had spent his entire adult life believing that success was measured in dollars and influence, believing that vulnerability was weakness, believing that he had everything he needed. He had been wrong too. Together, they had written a different story, a story about trust earned rather than demanded, about second chances that transformed into forever, about two broken people who had become whole by choosing to heal together. Aurora Callahan would grow up knowing she was loved fiercely and unconditionally. Her brother would never wonder if he belonged. Their family would be built on presence and intention, and the daily choice to show up for each other no matter what. And somewhere in Boston, in a shelter that bore the Callahan family name now, women who had survived the unthinkable would find the resources they needed to rebuild their lives. They would receive job training in childcare and legal aid, and, most importantly, the knowledge that someone who understood their pain was fighting for them. Because Vivian never forgot where she came from. And Dominic learned that the best use of his wealth was investing it in people rather than portfolios. This story began with a single night, a choice made in vulnerability, a secret that could have destroyed everything. But instead, that night became the foundation for something beautiful. The woman who thought she would always be alone found a partner who would never leave. The man who had everything discovered what actually mattered, and a little girl who was never supposed to exist became the joy of their lives. Sometimes our greatest fears lead us to our greatest gifts. Sometimes the people who seem most unattainable are the ones most worth fighting for. And sometimes, taking a chance on love is the bravest thing we can do. Have you ever taken a leap of faith that changed everything? Have you ever given someone a second chance or needed one yourself? Do you believe that people can truly transform when love shows them who they could be? If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in the power of redemption and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that love can find us in the most unexpected ways. Drop a comment telling me what part of Dominic and Vivian's story resonated with you most. I read every single one. Remember, your story isn't over. No matter what your past holds, no matter what mistakes you've made, no matter how impossible love might seem, the next chapter can always be different. The sunrise is always coming. All you have to do is be brave enough to wait for it. Thank you for being part of Billionaire Love Stories with Mr. Brad. Until next time, believe in love, believe in second chances, and most importantly, believe in yourself.